Down here, salt is a way of life.
Obviously, the environment down here is all salt. The ceiling's salt, the floor is salt, the walls are salt, and to an extent, the air is salt. And you breathe that in, and you can constantly taste the salt.
Hey guys, don't worry, the intro is just a meme. I'm not actually salty about making a Tactician build, but I know my previous builds have been for DPS. I'll be making another DPS video soon, but if you followed my previous guides, not much has changed. Something else to mention before I start is that in Mod 15, since we swapped to a single AC/DC meta, the benefit of having a Tactician in your group has increased significantly, as the potential AP gain we provide the DCs is unmatched by any other class. In the old double DC meta, the responsibility of maintaining daily uptime was shared, but that type of party comp is now a thing of the past. Now that doesn't mean that Tactician is better than Conqueror now, it just means that you'll see an increase in demand for Tacticians. And depending on the skill level of your DC and party composition, it will often be the more effective option to play. For people who came just to see my boons, feats, mounts, etc., there'll be timestamps in the description so you can fast forward to exactly what you want to see. But I'll be talking a bit at the beginning before I start showing the build. I'm just making sure that I get to cover everything I think is important. Not just so you can recreate my build, but so you can walk away with a better understanding of why things work, so you can make better, more informed decisions when adapting my build to fit your own personal needs. I've always believed that there's no one perfect build that works for every player in every situation. So I want to talk about Tactician, and while I'll eventually display what I use, I want to talk about the theory behind what makes a successful Tactician. It may not be exactly what other people believe, and that's okay, but I'll at least take the time to explain what works for me and why. First, I'll talk about recovery, because it's pretty much a universally agreed upon that it's Tactician's most useful stat. A good place to sit with this is usually around 20k, around 20,000 or so resting before bondings proc, and the reason for this is that the amount needed, that's about the amount needed to keep Into the Fray up full time, even out of combat. You can go higher if you want, but I choose not to. After bondings proc, it's a different story. Solo, I'll sit around 30,000 recovery, but in a full party after Artificers procs, it's common for me to reach around 70,000, which is more than enough recovery for me to achieve my goals, especially when you factor in cooldown reduction from OP's Flash of Light and Aura of Wisdom, and DC's Hastening Light. You'll find it's pretty easy to keep Into the Fray up full time and even stack Inspiring Leader 2 times, which is an additional 5% damage buff that stacks with itself multiplicatively. The next thing I want to talk about is HP and lifesteal. I keep my hit points moderately low and my lifesteal extremely high. And when I say moderately low, I mean I keep it around 180 to 200,000, depending on how many people in my team have VIP bonuses. But you'll notice that in this guide, one of the main themes I want to be taking damage. I want to be losing big chunks of my health to fuel the AP gain of the party using my capstone Martial Mastery. It's the last feat on the Tactician path. So I keep my HP on the average side, so when I get hit, it hits me for more damage. But then I get my life back immediately using lifesteal. One thing right now is that the tooltip for Martial Mastery says you gain a bonus to it based on your damage resistance, and thanks to RJC we know that this is true, but the amount of AP gained is based on your percentage of HP lost, and the amount is 0.25% AP for every 1% HP lost. So basically what that means is you lose 4% HP, team gains 1% AP. The effectiveness of this scales with damage resistance. So if you have 10% damage resist, you get a 10% bonus to this. If you have 80% damage resistance, you get an 80% increase. But as a note, this is as high as it's been tested, the damage resist cap at the time. Additional Additionally, sources of damage resistance from Hallowed Ground, Villain's Menace, Divine Glow, Shield of Faith, all of these count towards this bonus. So we're going to see that it's possible to achieve the maximum theoretical AP gain output with the dailies and support of your team alone, without actually stacking defensive stats. So basically, it's okay to take damage, which brings me to my next two stats, defense and deflection. I keep these low, very low, compared to a lot of people. I have about 7,000 defense and 4,000 deflect. But before you jump on me saying, well, how are you supposed to tank with defensive stats that low? Well, when you're in a team that's properly built for success, it's really not an issue. And you'll find that it helps the team more than it hurts. I did a Castle Ravenloft in hardcore and lowered item level yesterday. I was the main tank. I did this 2 times. I didn't die even once. Weird flex, but okay. There's a video up of the run on Diamond's YouTube channel. I'll have a link in the description if you want to check it out. But the build works. It's low HP, low defense, low deflect and all, but it works. So why have I chosen to sacrifice so much defensively? Well, it's not actually as weak defensively as it may appear. There's a few reasons for that. One of the reasons is that our main daily is Villain's Menace, which increases our damage resistance by 20%. And I can pretty much use this daily and only this daily, because my lifesteal is so high. I don't need to lean on Fighter's Recovery. And at the same time as I use Villain's Menace, I'm also proccing my Insignia bonus for Shepherd's Devotion, which boosts defense, deflection, and movement by 5% of your power. And this bonus not only scales upward when you have buffed higher power, but it also stacks with everybody else in the group who's also running this when they use their daily. And at the rate that we're boosting people's AP gain, you'll find that Shepherd's Devotion is up and active more often than you might think, with multiple stacks. So yeah, on top of that, your DC is going to be using Anointed Army more often because of your AP gain, and Hallowed Ground on top of that because of AP gain. Your Devo Pally will be using Shield of Faith more often. So all these external sources of damage resistance are just going to pile on, and you might stop and wonder how your capstone is really doing anything at all. Okay, to summarize so far, we have high recovery to maximize our Into the Fray and Commander's Strike uptime. But we also use low HP, low defense, and low deflect to increase the AP gain of our team members, so they can daily more often. Which in turn feeds our damage resistance, defense, and that's going to increase the output from our capstone. But you know, all this stuff, it's going to help reduce our cooldowns. It's going to help keep us boosted with power because of things like AA going off more often, higher Artificer's procs, which results in more recovery, and basically it's all going to help us achieve a certain synergy within the group that allows everyone to help each other significantly much more than, let's say, a classic tankier build would allow. Alright, next I'm going to talk about my offensive stats, because basically I'm built entirely for DPS, with the exception of some boons. I have very high crit, around 80 to 90% crit chance, and I run with a Dread enchantment because it not only boosts my crit severity, but it's also a healthy debuff enchantment. I don't run Fey Touched or anything to make the enemy hit me for less. I want to take damage, and I want to deal damage back, so not just to help me hold aggro, but to ensure I keep taking damage, but also to speed up the overall time of the run. Since I can do this without sacrificing any buffs, and in ideal situations maintaining appropriate stacks defensively, building offensively just makes more sense to me at this point in the game, even as a tank. Okay, why do I want to deal damage? It's one of the main factors in deciding who has aggro. Yes, our mark is an important tool, because the moment you mark enemies around you, you automatically have 10% more threat than anyone else. You're placed at the top of the aggro list. But after that, if you aren't doing consistent damage, it'll be very easy for the DPS to overtake you. And then the only way to get control of the situation again would be to mark everything all over again. So it's important that we have damage output, or some damage output, to establish and maintain highest priority on the enemy's aggro list. Now, I do this by making sure I have the proper armor pen for the content I'm running, and I keep a high level of crit, in my case over 80%, and I utilize Jagged Blades and Wrathful Warrior in the Conqueror tree. I also run DPS companions, and I wear DPS gear, and I use a Wild Storm elixir for 10% extra crit severity. I'm a Swordsmaster, so that I can utilize Steel Grace, which is great for increased movement speed and crit chance. The other class feature I use is Enhanced Mark, which not only helps me generate additional threat, but helps to ensure that I'm taking damage to boost AP gain. And when combined with the Offhand class feature for this bonus, it turns your marks into an additional 5% debuff. Another thing to note is that since the introduction of the Cursebringer ring and Lycosa's gloves, we've been able to proc our Crushing Pin debuff from the Tactician tree without needing to rely on certain control boons or feats or encounters, which gives us a tremendous amount of freedom in terms of decisions we can make when deciding how to play or build our tunes. For example, where I might have chosen Impenetrable Jungle in the past to proc Crushing Pin, I've now decided to go with Soul Siphon and Lingering Curse, which gives me a little bit extra damage and another way to heal myself in combat. So adjustments like these can be considered when playing with these items. As far as artifacts go, for my main, I normally run Heart of the Black Dragon full time, as it can be used to proc Artificer's Persuasion for that movement speed and recovery buff every 15 seconds. It's consistent, it's useful, and one of the easiest to animation cancel using your shield. That being said, it's nice to have a Wheel of Elements in case you need to give the main DPS in the party a fire buff on the off chance the OP doesn't have a wheel. It's also nice to keep a Soul Sight Crystal in your pocket because, believe it or not, there's going to be situations where you may need to main DPS as Tactician. I've been in teams where I used Knight's Challenge, Soul Sight Crystal with Griffin's Wrath as if I were playing a Conqueror build. But I did well because I was still buffing the DC's AP gain to help them use both Anointed Army and Hallowed Ground. And I was taking double damage from Knight's Challenge, and that's even more AP gain. But yeah, I've also run Knight's Valor, Knight's Challenge, and Into the Fray, and used a Vorpal enchantments and just spammed at wills to do main damage as DPS. But I'm moving off topic a little bit. But what I'm trying to get at here is when you embrace this type of hybrid DPS buff build, you'll find that there are a lot of different fun, engaging, and effective ways to play the class to help all varieties of parties at different skill levels and item levels. So yeah, for now. Come Mod 16, when GF gets its much anticipated DPS nerf, we may find our ways to contribute within a party are much more limited. Alright, I also recommend grabbing a pristine Siegebreaker's Horn if you ever had the chance. It's available during the siege on Neverwinter, and it's very helpful in a tight spot, or just in general if you're really looking to maximize your buff output during a short window of time. But that's pretty much it, so I'll show you everything now in awkward silence and give a demonstration of what things look like when I'm in combat. Thanks for taking the time to listen to me talk about this. I'll have a link to RJC's guide in the description, but because while our builds differ, there's still a ton of great information in there which I think would definitely be helpful to Guardian fighters, and honestly anyone who's been following some of my videos about the Neverwinter damage formulas and mechanics. Okay, see you soon.
unknown, it cannot